Hello, everybody, and welcome to this latest in the ValuesJam guest session series. And Natalia, it's great to have you here. To start with, please introduce yourself and tell us about the great work that you do.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you for having me, and also thank you for the great work you do and for doing all these years the Values Jam. As I shared, I listened to some of the episodes and I really enjoyed them. So it's a
Good.
pleasure and honor to be also a guest. So about me, it's a very, I'll try to be short because it's a difficult, not a difficult question, but there's no an easy short answer. So basically my life, I think I'm in a kind of a third stage now. So it started, I'm talking my professional life. It started with 20 years of kind of executive leadership entrepreneurial career. And during that stage, these 20 years, it was very interesting because I went from local startup to an international company to then a global alliance and then becoming part of big corporate. So throughout this time, there was different stages, different experiences, and very transformative years. Then after these 20 years, I became a management consultant, training facilitator, and I spent around 10 years into that. I'm kind of still in that area, but I often joke that I'm a recovering management consultant, a recovering workaholic, and a recovering idealist. And there's some reasons I'm saying that. Today, I'm less focused on like I used to work more with companies, big companies, and leaders. Today, I'm more interested in what I call change makers. They can be anywhere. They could be leaders, or they could be a totally ordinary person that's responsible only for themselves.
Mhm.
And I'm very interested on that personal level. It's just the way my career went. I decided that change really happens on the individual level, and I'm much more inspired to work on that level together with community. So I have a community called Heart to Heart Online, which also went through some transformation. So we used to be a much bigger group, but in this bigger group, it was more like, I don't know, more close to the way Facebook groups are or LinkedIn groups. So
Okay.
very different people with very different values. So we're now much smaller, and we have smaller groups and work on projects. One of them is actually we're developing learning courses called Change Whisperer Learning Journeys. And they have 4 parts: becoming, activating, impact, and mastery. And it's all community based. So basically, I'm doing it together with other people from the community. So that's one part. And there's another part. So there actually 2 more parts.
Mhm.
I have also started, went to the kind of educational level. So I'm teaching business and economics, and I really love it because I'm working with young people, and it's very rewarding experience. And the other part is I have become constellator of systemic constellations. So I do work, let's call it on the intuitive level. And the reason I was fascinated with that is because with my work, which includes values into a big part. So throughout all this career, values and culture were a huge kind of line. How do you
Great.
leading one thread? Yeah. Uh, and I lost my train of thought. Uh,
So
okay.
you were talking about being with young people and how
Oh
value.
yeah, and the constellations also. So I there's a lot of wishful thinking when we are talking about values. So I really liked with constellations, you go more on an intuitive level, and it's somehow you tune into things on a much deeper level. So kind of the foundations of what we do, and that really, really is more meaningful to me and on a personal level more rewarding than the propaganda, the politics, the blah blah blah. At some point of my career, I got tired of the talk, which doesn't match the reality. And maybe I'll say a last sentence. I am living in Zurich, Switzerland right now, but I'm Bulgarian by origin. So I actually spent the first part of my life in what we would call communism, and the later part in whatever market economy or capitalism. And there was a huge transformation that I went, not me personally, but the societies and countries in which I work, because big part of my career is in Eastern Europe. So in several countries of Eastern Europe for an North American company. So I kind of went through that transformation, and I thought that would be the biggest transformation in my life. But actually right now, with society is going through much bigger transformation, but I'm finding it useful. I went through that one because there are similarities in times of huge changes.
Yeah.
And in these times, it's very interesting also what happens with values. So I find that experience, I didn't always used to be grateful for that experience, but today I'm very grateful that I've lived through these two different types of societies and economic systems.
Yeah. And what you've described, it seems to me that you benefited from an enormous breadth and depth of experience that you're now able to apply. And I think that's more important today than it's ever been, because we live in against a landscape that is just changing so fast all of the time. And so previous knowledge is kind of not so important anymore. It's more about wisdom and being able to apply previous experience. So, and that's very, very different. It used to be that you could become an expert in something and then have a lifetime career, but that's no longer the case, because now the knowledge today can be redundant tomorrow. So it's very, very different.
Yes, and also I totally agree with that, and I would add also that like when you said the word expert, so a lot of people were really making a career out of the knowledge they had.
Yep.
And today it means nothing with artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence would always have more knowledge than us.
Yeah.
And people whose identity is related to the knowledge they had, I think I experience being fearful now to artificial intelligence, because we don't really understand how we humans are better than the machines in any forms, because their whole identity is based on this expertise they developed. And that's a big, big question in today's world, also related to education.
Yeah.
What are we educating people? Because big part of what we educate from, not everywhere, there is good education as well, but traditional education systems are focused on this knowledge, acquiring knowledge, rather than wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so let's choose a ValuesJam card. So I've got the deck here, and I'm going to tip the cards out. And first off, how many piles of cards would you like me to place in front of me?
Okay, let's say 3.
3, okay. So, and now would you like the left pile, the right pile, or the middle pile?
The right pile.
Okay. So here I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 20 cards. So a number between 1 and 20.
14.
14, okay. So what do you think of this word?
Oh my God. I love it.
So the first
I love it because my life has been Oh God, yeah, I love it. I look forward to the conversation. Yeah.
All right. So, well, tell me a bit about why. Why that reaction to the word balance?
Wow, because everything is about balance at the end. And I relate to that in a lot of different spheres, but I'll start with one which I mentioned in my initial introduction, and that's idealization. So I said that I'm a recovering idealist.
Yeah.
Um, I think anytime we, so it could be a really good idealism. So we can believe in love or in like in the biggest values, right? But anytime we focus too much on a specific aspect, even the best aspect, we actually lose touch first with the rest of the world in general, second with the opposite value, which is never about something negative. We often think, oh, the opposite of love is something negative, like hatred, but it's not. For example, I'll give you an example with uh, love. I read a book called Love and Power.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a famous saying that love without power is anemic, and power without love is abusive. So this is, for example, one uh, example of how we need to keep balance. And we cannot just be focused on love, neither only on power. And absolutely every aspect of life, we can go and there's some balancing out. But probably the reason I mostly reacted to, there was a point in my life where, first of all, it was a kind of a very difficult moment. I got sick and I was going through a lot of, I don't know, we tend to think more when we are in bed and dealing with sickness. And at that time, I read something which probably I've even heard before, but then it touched me. And it was related to the saying, which I was reading another author, but it's afterwards I saw that it's coming from Jung, that everything that irritates us in others is a sign that there's something we need to work on.
Yeah.
And that was the time I started seeing how, and it's connected to this idealization I was talking about. I started seeing how I'm too set up on a lot of things, and that prevents me from really seeing the full picture and really connecting with other people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how good they are, you just close doors. And um, I even had a little work done, which it was under the name Opposites at Work. So I was actually teaching people to look at the opposite view, point, whatever it is, and to find out like why are some people on the opposite view. And even today, for me, this remains a rule that if you want wise decisions, if you want wisdom in general, you need to always be curious about the opposite views.
Yeah.
And only then you can have a balance and wisdom. So for me, this balance is about wisdom.
Right. Okay. And so okay, let's move to the first question then. And we've touched on some of this already, but the question is, what does balance mean? And there's a second part to the question, which is metaphoric. So what does it look, feel, and sound like? So if we start with what does it mean, and like I say, you've kind of started to explore that already.
Yeah, so for me, balance is about uh, not allowing yourself to go too far just in one direction. So it's about kind of the middle point between concepts, views, and when I say middle, it's not always exactly in the middle, right? It's not about physical middle, but it's about exploring both points. So also, so there's something else. So balance is movement also. So it's like driving a bicycle. So the only way you can keep the balance for a long time is by driving. So there's something about, and when you drive, you go a little left, a little right. So it's a process, it's a movement. It cannot be established. So it cannot be a stable position. It's not a place we stay, but it's a constant drive towards exploring all the points of view. That's how I see it.
Okay, and actually, you've made me think. Today, I was with some MBA students, and one of the things that I touched on was how context is so much more important than content. So in industry conferences, lots of people from the same industry gather together. There's a guy on the stage or a lady on the stage who explains all of this knowledge and expertise, and then these people go back to their own organizations, and they are some of them are tempted to try and implement what they've just heard in their organization, and then they're surprised that it doesn't actually work. And the reason for it is that context and the individual situation that their organization is in is so much more important than that content. Now, what you've just said about riding the bike has made me think about how this is related to balance, because as you're riding your bike, you're encountering different environments as you go. So, you might be on a smooth road, and then you might be on a bumpy track, and you'll need to adjust and behave differently according to the context that you're in, rather than think I can ride a bike, and in one situation it's not the same as another one. So I'd never thought of that before about balance. So thanks for bringing that movement element into it.
Yeah. I really like that you brought this aspect of different where are we riding the bike, and I totally agree. And if we're continuing with the metaphor, today we're riding in a constantly changing landscape with all kinds of dangerous things keep coming, and the dangers keep increasing. So this balancing act gets very, it's kind of a daily experience.
Yeah.
And it's getting more and more difficult not to lose ourselves.
Yeah.
Because there are easy solutions that seem to be taking us in some directions, but they're not the wisest. And I will bring one more aspect, actually, this riding a bike that we're describing. We need to be present. We need to be present and conscious. There's no other way, because if where we ride the bike is constantly changing, if we start thinking of something else, we're gonna fall. I mean, we're not gonna notice something. So it's the same today. I think actually this is the most important thing, is to not be unconscious. Whatever is happening to us, to not mechanically approach it. Because when we approach it mechanically, we're approaching it with our historic knowledge, experiences, instincts, and in many cases they're wrong advisors. So we need to be awake to the situation now.
Yeah, I think this metaphor is really, really thought-provoking, actually, because when you said there about we need to be present, and I think you said we need to be cautious as well.
Conscious.
Yeah, I had a picture of like a cross-country cyclist, and they go so fast.
Yes.
And so my initial reaction when you said we need to be cautious, I was thinking, well, is that right? Because those guys it doesn't seem that they're cautious. But then I was thinking, actually, it's because they're drawing on a lot of previous experience, and they trust in their ability to react and respond to what is happening right now at this moment. So it's this combination, I think, of being present, but also being equipped and trusting in your ability to deal with whatever the environment brings to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I actually meant conscious.
Oh, conscious, sorry.
Yes,
Okay.
it's just my probably pronunciation, but you brought you made a really good connection there, and I think that's exactly what we're called in here, is to be so exactly as you're describing this biker. He does all this training, right? So he trains and trains and trains, but then you almost have to forget all the training and be in the moment and just leave it for your body to react and find. So it's not about thinking in the moment, it's more about awareness of everything that's happening to the best of your abilities and then reacting to it based on all this knowledge, but not it's not about thinking. It's much more about it's more about intuition, actually.
And that comes back to work that you do. The other thing that I just wanted to throw in here was something that I heard. It's to do with the guy that I can't remember the guy's name, supposedly the person that invented Tai Chi. And the story is that one of his students said to him, "Master, why is it that you always have balance?" And he said to the student, "I don't always have balance. It's just that I regain my balance quicker than you." And so I think this plays to what you were talking about the sense of movement, but in a slightly different way, because rather than the sense of movement just forwards, I think there's a temptation for us to think that balance is static. You have balance, whereas because of that story and related to your point about movement, I think you can be doing this all the time. And so here you're not in balance, but you then regain your balance, and then here you're not. So it's a constantly changing state rather than being something that's static.
Exactly. And I think this relates to many things. So I don't know, joy, happiness, everything we strive for in life. It's not about achieving it and staying there. It's about your ability to constantly. It's the master said, so get back to it. So it's about faster, calibrating faster rather than being longer there. I think we're human beings, so we're actually constantly out of balance, but that's the beauty. Very interesting.
And so I also the conversation about a bicycle, and then we talked about sport in a way. If I can broaden that now, I think we have something to learn from people operating at the very top of their field, either in sport or maybe music, or maybe more generally, actually. And so I'm just thinking about tennis, for instance. And there are certain points in tennis when points are more important than other points in the game. But the very top players don't treat them any differently. And when they win a point or a match or a tournament, yes, they celebrate for a while, but they don't get carried away. It's I won. And if they lose, similarly, they don't get despondent, or hopefully they don't, the people right at the top of their profession. Because again, to your point, life involves winning and losing. And if you realize that, and you don't get affected one way or the other too much, then there's a much better chance that you will retain balance and be better prepared as you go forward.
Absolutely. And I think this is a very profound truth that we don't always realize, and sometimes I mean, if we realize it and we're really conscious of it, it will change how we look at life in general and the situations we get in. Because a lot of situations we should just smile about them and just move on. And instead we get desperate, we go into conflicts with people. I mean, all kinds of stuff that actually is senseless. It's a waste of time. And I think that's again the mastery, not to drop too far. Like
Yeah.
when something happens, you know it's just a temporary thing, and it's kind of more, okay, another bump on the road, and you rebalance instead of going all the way on some direction. That's also mastery. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was thinking along those lines actually, because it also seems that we kind of over glorify joy and happiness, and we are really hard on, tough times and sadness, but actually they just are there. And so the more that, like you say, if something bad happens, rather than get all caught up in it and all of your energy going away, isn't it much better to just respect it for what it is and deal with it so that you can move on?
Absolutely. And I think you're touching upon something very important and very dear to me, because I think we're living in a world where I think somebody nailed the term toxic positivity. So too much focus on positivity. It's again this idealization that I was talking about. So it's a good thing, positivity, but too much of it becomes a poison. Actually, it's the same with medicine, with some foods and
Yeah.
herbs and stuff. Too much of it, uh, the right quantity heals. Too much of it becomes toxic. So it's the same. We are, and especially social media is playing a huge role in that. It's everything is upbeat. It's all nice photos. Everybody is traveling happy in their best places, and we're actually not giving enough. We're not honoring human things like sadness, losing somebody. Like we need to honor that. That's part of life. Rather than, oh, I need to be positive. And this artificial positivity actually, it's actually very dangerous. So bad, like the sad feelings, the so-called bad feelings, they're there for a reason. They help us go through whatever we're going. So there's nothing bad in being sad or sorrow or angry. And I think we're really doing disservice by trying to teach this positivity above all. It's
Is that
totally wrong.
when you mentioned toxic positivity, were you referring to Susan David's work, or is it other people?
I think it was her. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And what about the metaphors? So when you think about the word balance, what images come to mind, and what sounds come to mind, and what feelings come to mind?
I don't know. I mean, as far as an image, when I think of balance, it's very trivial. First comes this the scale. I don't know. It's just,
Yeah, the scales.
yeah. So that's the most traditional image. Um, so what was the question? So what images, what feelings you said also?
And also what sounds.
Sounds. Um, for me, when you ask about feelings, uh, some pain and sadness comes because I have not always been good in keeping balance in important things in my life. So I I think I mentioned it. I'm joking with myself that I'm recovering workaholic.
Yeah.
So I wasn't always good at keeping the so-called work-life balance, which, by the way, I don't like the term work-life because it puts work as outside of life. And I think it's totally stupid. For me, always work was something, it was a place to learn, to express myself, to experience joy. So for me, it doesn't matter whether it's work or recreation. It's more a matter of finding the right balance of different aspects of your life that are important so that you enjoy it. And I wasn't always good at that. I'm still not, I'm better now, but I'm still not good. So a little bit sadness came there and pain from these years where I was going too far in one or another direction.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the feeling that came. But when the feeling I have with balance, the way I really understand that word, for me, it's equal to joy. So the ability to balance, when I can do it, this is when I'm joyful.
Yeah.
So that's what comes as another connection.
Mm. And for me, so I've got a simple image, a bit like yours. So mine is a trapeze artist, or no, a tightrope. You know, where you've got the pole and you're walking across a piece of.
Yes.
So that's the image. The feelings that balance gives me is one of real strength, actually, and solidity. And so, just using the tightrope artist as the example, it's when you have balance, it's like the rope is as wide as a road. You know,
Yeah.
it's like that
Yeah.
rather than you feeling that you're going to fall. And sound, I think of stereo actually. So you're hearing from both sides of the speaker rather than just from one place. Okay, so let's choose another question, which is you've talked a little bit about. Oh, and let me just comment. You mentioned work-life balance. I don't like that phrase either. And if anything, I think it would be interesting for us to consider life-work balance rather than work-life balance, because why should work come before life? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and also it's just part of life. It's all life, right? It's not that. And to me, this division comes from the times when it's like there are these cliches, like it's work, it's what was it? It's person. It's not. It's business. It's not personal. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are supposed to go to work and check out at the door our personal stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Emotions, how we
Yeah.
feel, what we really believe. And we're supposed to enter and then accept the organizational values to connect with the values, right? And then because that doesn't feel so good, we're actually not authentic at work, right? So then we need the other part so that we have fun and enjoy life, right? And I I even wrote an article a while back because I read it was I can't remember the authors, but it was some research published in Harvard Business Review, which concluded that people who earn enough money, and can't remember all the details of it, but people are happy when they can earn enough money at work so that they can spend it in the rest of their lives. But it was this division again. And I really, really disliked it because we're supposed to do things in the name of money so that we can afterwards spend it on experiences and joy and entertainment. And for me, this is like everything that's wrong about not all business, but some of it. It's this division. It's this expecting that we're not truly ourselves at work. It's just part of the way things are designed. And yes, we talk today about authenticity and things like that, but the reality is still business is dominated by this division. So we're not supposed to fully show up at work.
Yeah. And it's quite scary how powerful the concept of the organization has become. Because, like you say, it's almost like the reason we exist is to serve the organization. And then the organization will be pretty condescending and give us the ability to have some fun sometimes. And that, if you start to think like that, it's just quite crazy, really.
Yeah, yeah, but it's not surprising because we live in a world where the most powerful figures are actually big organizations. It's not governments anymore.
Yeah,
It's
agree.
actually big corporations. So no wonder this shifts the values, right? Um, for me, it's also very interesting the conversation. I'm so, as I mentioned, tired of we actually called it in something we did for World Values Day, we called it manufactured values. So these are the values that is at focus, they're spoken about, they're widely accepted like in society, organizations, but they're not real. They're just words that are used as flags, and we follow them because and I can bring words like democracy, equality, diversity. I mean, the list goes on, and they're used, and they're officially accepted ways of doing things. And then if you revolt against them, you're against democracy. You're against so it has become almost impossible to actually, on a lot of subjects, to actually say what you really think because somehow it's brought against you. So there is this exchange where words we talk about, but actually, if you really take the time, we are not driven by these values. Actually, there are underlying values that are really driving life, organizations, societies, countries, and they have nothing to do with these words which are being discussed.
Yeah.
And that's where I also find useful some of my experiences with this transition from planned economy to market economy, because I was very young then, and I was one of these people. I wanted to be part of the world. I wanted us to join the Western world. Now, like that was America, UK. I mean, we wanted to be part of it. So we were. Um, I'm putting the parenthesis because we were on the streets and doing things for democracy because we wanted to be part of the democratic world and we wanted free market economy and all these other things. But under this layer, so it was a whole generation of people that supported this movement. Under that layer, there were completely different processes driven by totally different values.
Mm-hmm.
And I would, to make it short, I would say connected to the initial, basically driven, like it was one of those things, follow the money. And you could see what really was happening and what was really driving the process. And the people who were talking about democracy and this, that, and the other actually were doing completely different things.
Yeah.
And I see the same happening now. There is like a conversation that's going on, and we think we're going for some values, and we accept them because they sound good, but actually they're not what drives society. And it's the same in organization. There's beautiful values. I mean, they've become so good uh, verbalizing them, right? But the actual values are completely different. And I wish, I honestly would feel much better if we have the courage and dignity to call things the way they are. It's going to be a much more clearer world. And okay, so money drives the world. Okay, so let's say it, right? Instead of saying we're driven by democracy. And I mean, nothing bad with democracy. I'm just saying very often we do things that are completely undemocratic in the name of democracy. So yeah, maybe I got carried away. I'm sorry.
No,
But
you might have got carried away, but it touches space that's really close to my heart because, well, for a couple of things. Firstly, the thing that you said about just call it the way that it is. In the values space, there's a lot of people that advocate that we should be living particular specific values. And I don't concur with that. My position on that is I don't care what values you stand for as long as you behave in line with what you say. So if you're about power and wealth, then that's good. Carry on. But don't pretend that you're compassionate and you care about kindness. So it's this authenticity thing. And then if everybody was authentic, then everybody would be able to make their choices accordingly. And that's the way things would go. I think the challenge is what you also touched on, when things on the surface seem to be one thing, but actually it's driven by an intention underneath that is not the same and sometimes really dark. And even though we live in a joined up world where transparency should be increasing, there are things that happen that seem to imply that that's not always the case, and there's still the chance that what we believe is being presented is actually just a veneer, and the truth underneath we can't see. And somebody this is to do with the UK, so I'm not sure if you'll be aware. Recently in the news, there's been a lot of exposure of school buildings that were made in the 1970s with a cheap form of building materials that are now coming to the end of their life. And so now there's a program of inspections that's having to happen and probably replacement buildings. Now, in the UK, the current government is not regarded very well at all at the moment, and it looks likely that there will be a change of government at the next election. And so on a call recently, a guy said to me, do you know, this is their last chance to invite their friends to make money from this program of inspections and rebuilding before they won't have the opportunity to do that again because they won't be in power. And it sent a shiver down my spine. That's just so scary. And funnily enough, in the same week, I was talking to somebody in Nigeria who was explaining how the government had said that they had put a lot of funding into road improvements. And when you go on the roads, there are no improvements and people are questioning you. So where has the money gone? And this lady was saying, it's okay for you in the UK where it's a much better system. And I was saying, well, I'm not so sure because the system is there, but people still play it.
I think it's the same system everywhere. Just like my experience, for example, let's take a film, corruption.
Yeah.
Like anybody, so my home country is Bulgaria. So everybody in the European Union knows there's corruption in Bulgaria, which is why Bulgaria is still not fully accepted in certain aspects. But you know what? I think it's total crap. Meaning, it's true there's corruption, but the only difference between Bulgaria and some of the developed countries is corruption is very sophisticated in the developed countries,
yeah. While
in Bulgaria, it's like in your face, like everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
But the corruption is the same. And the moment when I woke up to this is when I realized that the biggest corruption projects in Bulgaria are related to foreign corporations and European Union projects and other governments. So it's they just covered up and like made to look more legal, but it's the same things happening. So the actual values are the same. It just one is more covered up. And I totally relate to what you're saying with the housing project, the school project. I'm sorry, but the home, not homes. I wanted to say buildings.
Buildings, yeah.
Because this is very typical. Actually, we take something that's important. So these buildings are very important. Schools are important. It's important that they get refurbished. It's the same with the environment, with sustainability, bring any issue that's important today, and you will see it as a flag, but under that flag, there's serious money making. And that money making under that flag very often deviates from the original values that were waved with the flag. It's a very typical, and that's the reason why people roll up so much their eyes lately with, I don't know, sustainability, with a lot of initiatives like climate issues. I mean, people are fed up because they see so much dishonesty, let's call it, and so much, greenwashing and all kinds of words we can use. But it's very difficult to differentiate between what's really truthful and what's just money making.
Yeah.
And we are all busy and running, and you can't stop your life and start digging really. Yeah. So the end result is you become cynical to the whole thing.
Yeah. And I'm optimistic naturally, and you mentioned that you're a recovering idealist. I think I'm a practicing idealist. And so I guess my question for you is how can we restore the balance when you've got a situation like we've just described, where you've got the people in the most powerful positions who are actually feeding the system of corruption themselves? So what chance is there for there to be any balance there?
So to me, it's about, the only thing I believe in is working on the waking up of people.
Yeah.
So people start, so we were talking of this bicycle. So you cannot ride the bicycle with closed eyes based on your past experiences and what somebody told you, right? I mean, you need to be, as we said, alert to the situation and keep your next move needs to be a result of what you really experience in the moment. So it's the same. We need to stop thinking or acting mechanically and unconsciously following old practices, or okay, so they said it's sustainability, so it must be good, so I follow it. We cannot afford that. So we need also information. We need to start, and to me, this waking up, like I've thought a lot, like, so how do you wake up? It's like a big word, right? It's like what does it mean? And to me, there's one mechanism, and it's something we spoke about. If you want to wake up, you have only one thing to do: keep exploring the opposite to your viewpoint.
Yeah,
that's it. But really explore it. So look, like, why are there people on totally my opposite point of view? That's the only way you can go to the truth.
Yeah, and it's I hadn't really thought about it like this, but a discussion around World Values Day and also a discussion with my colleagues in the UK Values Alliance. We were talking about how we are preaching to the converted already in many of our sessions.
Yes.
And I was questioning how useful is that? And what I asked was, who would be the groups of people that would be least interested in values? And when we've identified those people, could we find a way to get to them to find out their opinion? because that would be far more interesting than people just saying, yeah, we agree, we think that's great. It creates no value.
I totally agree with you. And you said earlier also something about, yeah, I cannot repeat it, but my understanding is some people are just, yeah, you were talking that some people keep talking about certain values, that they should be the values.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, this is connected. There is a lot of, it's this what I call wishful thinking and just talking about things, but actually um, not making an impact. It has become a rhetoric, and most people who are not converted, so to say, they just roll their eyes, and I've seen this in corporations, and I see it in society at large. So we're not doing anything with it, and I absolutely agree. We need to reach the people because the reality is there are common values that unite all of us. I'm absolutely convinced any person in the world, if I have enough time to spend with them and get to know them, we're gonna find the common ground.
Yeah.
Anybody, even the biggest criminal,
Yeah.
killer, whatever,
Yeah.
as long as he's not in somehow sick. I mean, okay, there are some
Yeah.
serious mental issues, okay, but 99.9 probably percent of humanity, we have common values. But the reason these people don't engage in this conversation because they've seen all this false, unauthentic, actually. They're seeing the difference between what we talk about and what the actual world is, and you lose them. And the only way you can reach these people is get to the problems that interest them.
Yeah.
So what are the actual things that worry them? What is really at their heart now? And that's the only conversations that matter. And that's why community for me is important. So we need to create the smaller communities of people, like to reconnect to each other, to each other's humanity. So not this, as you're saying in the beginning, so or in the before conversation, that most things we do in life, they have certain objective, right? So you were saying, talking about it, and we need to find ways to connect to people outside of these objectives. So with the only objective of getting to know each other and like actually touching heart to heart. Like the community I started was called Heart to Heart Online. It's still called Heart to Heart Online because I felt that this is what's needed. We need to connect to each other in real conversations about what really truly matters to us.
Yeah.
But in terms of the balance, I don't know. I feel we're touching on things we can talk for hours. Uh, um, like because you were asking me, we started from how do you balance in the opposite view. For me, this is like the most simple recipe. If you want to change something in the world, you start with yourself by going and talking to people on the opposite view.
Yeah. And I think that that's a really profound point on which to start to bring our conversation or this values jam to a close now. And like you said, we've kind of veered away from balance a little bit and come back and then gone away. But with the values jam, that's absolutely fine. It's trusting that the conversation will go where we want it to go. But the final question is always the same, and I'm really curious about the answer that you will have for this. And it is, what are you encouraged to do differently about balance as a result of our conversation?
Very good question. I think to do more of what I'm talking about, because my life also is like any other human beings. I don't have that much time. So very often it actually goes more with like-minded people rather than the opposite. So that's what I want to do more. So actually, really, I'm talking about the really doing more in terms of, and it doesn't have to be engaging with people. There's maybe this is what I'm gonna do. I had an idea several years ago, but never realized it. I wanted to make a false pretense Facebook account and actually go and like all the things I disliked. Because then the algorithm will actually be showing me only that. It's just how it's designed.
Yeah.
So I think I'm gonna do that finally. Because I want to know what's moving these people and why are they not um, in many situations seeing what I see. And that's what interests me.
Wow.
And what am I not seeing? I mean, so
Yeah.
it's not just about them. It's about what am I not seeing uh, that there's so many people who think like that. Yeah.
Well, you're making me really curious now. So how long do you think this new Facebook account will need to be up and running before we could have a conversation? Because I would love to hear from you what your findings are in maybe in January or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know how long it's yeah, but maybe in January sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, let's schedule that. And mine, I think this conversation has encouraged me because I mentioned that we had the conversation about identifying groups that were not interested in values and then finding out how could we approach them. We didn't actually take the conversation further to be more detailed. So we haven't identified those groups. And so that's what I'm going to do with my colleagues is to make a list and then start to think about how we might approach these people. And actually, I've been reminded, I did a session with some 16-year-old students quite some years ago, actually. And it was about values. But on the way to the session, I was thinking, if I'd start talking about values to these guys, they're just going to be totally bored.
Which one? Yeah.
Yeah, so what I decided to do was after we did the introductions, I said, if you could have one word tattooed on your body, what word would it be? And they were right so engaged and so I never mentioned the values word, but we
Yeah,
absolutely,
but actually the answers
yeah,
exactly represent the values, and that's absolutely every human being has values,
yeah.
and there are values that connect all of us, but somehow the way we do these conversations about values do not reach people. So we need to change somehow the discussion, I think.
Yeah. And actually, and I've just had another idea. So I'm connected with you're familiar with BIC, the company that make pens and
Sure.
razors.
Yeah.
So they also have a foundation, and the foundation has a focus on creative expression. Um, and linked to that, BIC is also moving in that direction. So what they say is that they want to be known for what their pens can do rather than the pen. So they support art competitions and stuff like that. And they have bought a temporary tattoo company. So BIC now owns a company that you can buy temporary tattoos from. And they say the reason they've done that is because they recognize that young people are interested to use their body for their creative expression, right?
That's
So,
very interesting. Yeah.
so I'm going to contact my connection at the BIC Foundation and suggest that she considers a values-based tattoo initiative of some sort. So I don't know what that might look like, but you've just given me the little seed of an idea there. So thank you for that.
You're actually bringing a very interesting point, because I feel young people are expressing a lot of their values through their tattoos.
Yeah.
And we don't realize it. So a lot of them don't want to join this discussion of values, maybe, but they're actually expressing them. So maybe that's another thing. So a lot of older people don't like tattoos. So instead of saying we hate tattoos, let's see what are these young people expressing. That's another point, right?
Yeah. So imagine,
same principle.
yeah, imagine a piece of research where you collected, maybe from, I don't know whether you would need to do it from the individuals or from the tattoo artists. What are the most common tattoos that are requested, and what does that all mean? And the data, there must be enormous amounts of data out there, actually.
And I think it would be very interesting, because these people are putting it permanently on their bodies.
Exactly. So it's important, right?
Yeah, it's important, at least at this stage, for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Be a very
All right.
interesting project.
Okay, so I'll let you know how that progresses, and we'll put a date in the diary to have a look at your Facebook findings for January. And thank you so much for this Values Jam today. It's been fantastic.
Thank you, Alan. It's been fantastic for me as well to have this conversation with you.
Okay, Natalia, bye.
Bye. Have a good